So we're moving into Silo now, and what we're going to do is briefly look at setting up Silo and also configuring the Cintiq just so they work better together and to help speed up your workflow. As you can imagine, you're now using a pen on the screen, or perhaps you're using it next to your mouse, or you're using a different sort of input device. So you've got one hand on your pen, one hand on the express keys next to your tablet. You don't then want to be hunting out for your keyboard and jumping between the two. So before you start work, it's a good idea to just spend a little bit of time configuring the Cintiq to work with that application, and also configure the application to work better with the Cintiq. Sort of taking away the need for the keyboard. You won't be able to eliminate it 100%, but it may be that you lose the need for the keyboard, apart from if you're inputting certain numbers, or perhaps you're inputting names of things. So let's first look at configuring the Cintiq. So the first thing you might notice in Silo is if you're using your pen, let's just bring up this screen. Basically, with the Cintiq, we have these three buttons at the top here. We have a keyboard toggle. If I press that now, you'll see a keyboard will pop up at the bottom, and this allows you to then go in and input rather than using your keyboard. We have the Wacom settings there. If I press that now, that will just bring up your general settings. And we also have an I button here, which is basically the overlay which you're looking at now. If I press this, you see it brings this up, it overlays it on top of your screen, but obviously it's too big to show on this video. That's why I've used the screen grab. So if I turn that off, and it tells you what your buttons are currently set up for. Now, all these buttons can be configured per application. There are global settings where every button will do the same thing for everything, but then you can go in and say, for this specific application, I want this button to do this action. So they're completely configurable. So we have express keys at the left and the right hand side here. That's these 5 buttons here. We have these touch rings, and these allow you, these are sensitive to touch. So you can run your finger around these and, as it says here, use it to adjust the size of your brush, use it to rotate the page, or whatever else you want to configure it to do. So we have all these buttons to configure here, all these here, and also the ones on the pen. So everything is completely open to adjust and play with however you want, and it's dead easy to set these up, which is what I'll do now. So if we go back to Silo, we're using our, if I just bring that back again, sorry. So we can see by default we have Shift, Alt and Control. So we know instead of holding down those buttons on the keyboard, we can press these buttons here and they will do the same thing as we're moving our pen around. So there we go. We can successfully rotate around our object. We can zoom in and out. But the problem is we don't have a middle mouse button. Nothing's configured to be our middle mouse button, so we can't pan around the image. So that's the first thing we're going to set up now. So there are 2 ways to bring up those options. You could press the options button like so, or if you were looking at the information panel, we could see here we've got right click, double click, erase. So let's open up the pen properties, and we can open it up that way as well. Now at the moment these are the default sort of global settings, so we need to set it up so that it works. So the changes we're making are only affected when you're working in Silo. So let's click plus here and add Silo 2. So this is a list of things that are currently open, or you can browse to the executable. Click OK. So now we're editing the grip pen just for Silo. And all I'm going to do is change this double click here, because I don't really use double click, move up to clicks and go down to middle click. So let's close that down. So now we can rotate as we did before, but now if we hold down the middle mouse button, we can pan around. So there we've got full maneuverability around the viewport, and that is now configured, so every time we use Silo it will default to that. So that just makes our life a lot easier. So what else can we set up? So if we bring back this image here, what we can see is we have an undo and a redo in there by default. But the problem is undo will work, but redo won't work because it's set up differently, so it doesn't tie in to the hotkeys that are set up for Silo. If we move over to edit here and just have a look at how it's set up, undo is Control Z, which is pretty much the industry standard, but redo is Control Shift and Z. Now at the moment, if I just edit this slightly, like so, if I use those express keys, we can go to undo, but redo doesn't work. So let's fix that now. So let's bring back our options. Now we're not editing the pen this time, we're editing the main functions. So again, we have to go in, add Silo to, because we want this to only be affected when you're using Silo. And down here, we can change all of our express keys. We've got the left side and the right side. Also, you can edit your touch ring here. So each of the three main buttons will change it to do different things. And you also have your radial menu, which we will look at shortly. So let's go back to express keys. Undo works, but redo didn't. So let's just go to clicks. Let's go to keystroke, because we want to add in a set of keys. Let's clear that. Let's just go back and check what it was. Control, Shift and Z. So let's bring that back. If we click in here and we press the actual keys, Control, Shift and Z, like so. Click OK. Now it will save by default. You don't have to go in and save those settings. So now let's try this again. Let's move that over there. Undo we knew worked, and now redo works. So just by pressing those buttons, we can cycle through undo and redo. So we've added in our middle mouse button action. We've updated the undo and redo. So let's just look at adding in one more change. At the moment, if we hold down the button for our radial menu, if we bring up our info again, as we can see here, radial menu is this button here. So as we're working, we can press that button quite quickly, and we have further options to play around with here. As you can see, we can bring up our Wacom tablet properties quite easily there. Brush panel, which doesn't do anything because we haven't configured it just yet for this application. We have tab and all sorts. So let's set this up so that maybe we'll replace tab, and what we'll do is we'll make it hide and show these buttons here. And we can find out what the key press for that is by just going to display, show buttons, it's shift and space. So we can do that now. But it's a lot quicker to go in and click that than it is to go up and hunt through the menus. So again, let's open up our options. Let's go to functions, and we want to edit it for the Silo application. So let's go to our radial menu and click on tab, because this is the one we want to change. Now let's give it a name. So let's call it button toggle, like so. And again, we want a keystroke. Let's clear that, and then let's go shift and space. Click OK. Close that down. So now, rather than going edit, show buttons like that, we can just go toggle button, and that works just like that. So there we have just basically just shown you 3 quick techniques for just getting a few simple configurations into Silo, which will also work with your Cintiq. We added in the middle mouse button so we can now pan around. We also added in our undo and redo, so we fixed that because the redo wasn't working. And we've also just quickly added in our button toggle on the radial menu. So from here, you can now go in and start to configure the buttons on your Cintiq, these panels on your radial menu, pretty much everything, just so that the application and the hardware start to work better together. So what we'll do is we'll leave this here for now, and in the next video what we're going to do is just look at adding a few more buttons to Silo's UI, just so that some of the options are a lot easier to get to. And again, we're just trying to reduce the amount of interaction you have with the keyboard and bringing everything onto the screen for you to then play around with.